And welcome back to my Zelda 2 Let's Play. So after finishing the third palace, we're going to use our newly acquired raft to explore the new world. So this is the second half of Hyrule in this game. And the first thing that we're seeing is some new enemies. So these are Giruboku, or Girubuku. It's a weird name to say, but yeah. They're basically big floating eyeballs. And the trick with them is to attack them only when their eyes are open. When their eyes are open, they stop moving. Now, as is tradition, we have our new town, which is Naburu, which is another Ocarina of Time character, and she was the spirit mage, who was one of the Gerudo women who goes to the spirit temple and helps Link power up. Now this town has the dumbest of the spell little quests. So this woman's thirsty. So what do? We have a little fountain here. And we give her some water. Yeah, it's really boring, this one. Like, at least things like the mirror got you exploring a bit, and the water of life was kind of fun to find something in a different dungeon, but this is literally just like walk 2 spaces forward, get the water, and then give it back. And just as appropriately disappointing, we get, in my opinion, one of the least useful spells in the game. This magic will make your sword shoot fire! Sounds awesome, right? Well, fire is very cheap. It can attack enemies of different kinds. It's projectile, so that's kind of cool. But it's not that strong, first of all. And the only reason why it's required, in quotation marks, is because a lot of the enemies around here are immune to your normal sword attacks. And we'll be seeing both of those enemies within this part. But other than those 2 enemies, there's really not much of a use of fire, since, yeah, okay, having range is nice, but it just doesn't do much besides beat these enemies. So here we have Tektites, the bouncing spider enemies, which can only be killed with fire, and are one of the only enemies that are also only weak to fire, which, it just makes fire feel like such a pointless spell. Like, I've been complimenting the other spells and all the different uses so far, but fire is the first one where I genuinely just don't find a lot of use in it, and I only use it for grinding at this point in the game against Tektites. There is one more enemy inside this cave that can also be attacked, and it's a familiar one for Zelda fans, but it's weird that it's an enemy. It's Zora's. Yes, this weird demon dog thing is a Zora. And anyone who's played a Zelda game before knows Zoras are usually very friendly creatures, unless you've played something like Link to the Past. There you go. That's it. Ugh. Not so noisy now, are you? Enjoy your food, Freddy. And we're back after some technical difficulties. Yeah, so what happened there? Well, basically, my guinea pig, Freddy, started screaming his head off out of nowhere, which made me jump and caused me to knock my capture equipment mid-recording. And I thought, rather than having to backtrack and redo all of that part again, it'd be funny just to put a little thing of him whining, give a bit of the authentic showcase of when he wants his veggies, he's getting his veggies one way or another. But yeah, anyway, we're in the maze area now, which leads to the 4th palace. But before we go there, we need to grab our new spell, and to do that, we have to beat these enemies. They look like Lizalfos, but they're actually called Geru in this game. I prefer Lizalfos, so I'm just going to stick with that because it's easier to remember. So, these Lizalfos, I'll go into them more as we're travelling back, because this one doesn't take me long to defeat. But yeah, similar to the Iron Knuckles, it's jump stabs are your way to beat them. But as we see, there's a lost child here. So what do? We pick him up, of course! So yeah, the weird detail with that child is that in the Japanese version, he was behind a tiny little pen, which was really odd because it didn't look like it was really much of a trap for him to begin with. But you had to also grab him like any other item. You had to stab a child in the game to grab it. I don't know what they were thinking with that. Luckily, we got the improved version internationally, so there you go. We just have to touch it. Grab it, I mean. You know what? Pick up the child, there you go. No, but seriously, dark humour aside, we now have to take that child back to its owner. Parent. God, this is an awkwardly worded part. But yeah, so as we make our way, the Zalfos are worth talking about because compared to any enemy at this point in the game, they give 150 experience, which is the same as the blue Dark Nuts. Iron Knuckles, I'm going to keep that trend going. But yeah, the Zalfos are amazing to grind on. And what's great about them is, unlike the blue Iron Knuckles, they're not too hard to kill. They do quite a bit of damage, and they can take a few hits to break through the shield, but honestly, just jump stabbing them will eventually break through, so they're really not that bad. And in my opinion, they are the best enemy to grind on in this game because, as you can see, I've still got some levels to go, and I only have 3 palaces left before the final palace. So I'm probably going to grind on some of them off screen to level up myself at some point in this game. That's just how useful they are. But yeah, we've got some action scenes to make our way across to the 4th town. And as you might be able to see, there was a lot of lag going on again with the capture footage. Now, I don't know why this has been happening lately, but it's kind of made me want to keep stopping and starting with my recording in case it's a problem with overheating my recording equipment or something. But yeah, there were a lot of dumb moments here because of delays and not being able to properly feel like I was in control because of all the lag. But I made it work for myself and did what I could to sort my problems out. This is dumb though.
Failure.
So yeah, after that dumb death, I decided to just cast Fairy because we're going to another town anyway. I'll get a magic top up. I might as well just save myself the humiliation. And I killed the enemies, so I got my experience points, which is all that mattered in those battle screens. So here we are in the mountain town of Darunia, which is the Goron that helps you in Ocarina of Time. So you can see this game really was influential in the later Zelda games with the iconic names of the towns, if nothing else. So we get our magic topped up. And this is the first town where we can jump on the roofs, as in like properly. We went up on a roof in an earlier town, but this one, most of the roofs, in this screen especially, we can go up. Which I think is a clever little puzzle, because you realise some of these doors are locked, but they have weird chimneys. So, naturally, you try the jump spell, you find, oh look, I can go in some of the chimneys. And for doing it, we get a really useful sword technique. So this is the upward stab. Now, while I love the downward stab and I think it's the more useful technique, I really like the upward stab as well, as it's a bit of an extra bonus, and it can help with dealing with enemies that are really high above you and are a bit annoying. So things like the mowers that fly around, this technique is really useful for those type of enemies. But yeah, so the only thing left to get in this town now is the magic spell. So, with the lost child finally found, we bring it back to its parent. Now, the spell we get here isn't useful in the sense of what it does, but it's necessary to beat the game. In fact, you can't beat the 4th Palace without grabbing this magic spell. So as the old man says here, this magic will strengthen the shield. Which isn't wrong. It does make our shield stronger, because we can block certain attacks, like the axes and the Doom Knocker's attacks as well, which I only recently found out. But what you need this spell for is the boss. Without this spell, you cannot harm the boss. In my opinion, it's not a very interesting spell. But speaking of some interesting spells, you may be wondering, why have I cast Jump here? What's going on with this? So, on this screen, not so much. I'm showing that you can get pretty high. But on the other screen, I can get to the top. And you remember how in the last palace I used Jump to go really high, and I mentioned you can use Fairy. Well, if you do it in a town, this happens. As soon as I get to the point, sorry. But yeah. Now, as I go into this glitch, I will warn you now, make sure you do this on a file or a version of the game where you can go back to it safely. Like, you can undo this. Because as we'll see, when you cast Fairy, suddenly I'm in an older town. Yeah, I'm just suddenly now in a previous town. But that's not the weird thing. The weird thing is, the people that are disguised and are actually enemies, if one of them touches you near an exit point, you get a weird glitch. Now, I don't know, as I mess around here trying to get one to come closer to me, I don't know personally if the enemy has to hit you or if you can just get this to happen by just walking off the screen. But I get the enemies hit me just in case, because whenever I've done this glitch, that's how I've known it to work. Now, I learned this glitch from the Angry Video Game Nerd's review of Zelda 2, of all things. Or rather, he discusses it in... it is the Zelda 2 review. I was mixing it up with a different one. But yeah, and I thought it looked really funny, so I tried it out myself, and I was surprised to learn that it works. I knew about the one in the temple, but I never tried the one in the town before. So it was interesting that that was a thing that could happen. Now, it does take me a moment to do this, and again, if you're going to have a go at this glitch, make sure, above anything else, you have a way to get back. In my case, I created a restore point previously, so I know where I can go back, how to get back to this, since rewinding wouldn't take me properly back to where I needed to be. But yeah, so you get hit, and we're now stuck in the middle of the water. And since this area is normally inaccessible in the game, we can't even move or do anything. So you can see here I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this part. And yeah, it was a bit of trouble. So when I come back, we will be continuing our journey towards the 4th Palace. So see you in a moment.
No!
And we're back. So, just because I figured it wouldn't make sense to do a bit of a part where we're trekking towards the 4th Palace, I decided to make this one a little longer because I wanted to make sure that the whole journey towards the 4th Palace was caught. So here we have our first example of a life. So, certain places in the overworld you can find these weird link dolls. And when you grab them, you get an extra life. Now, a huge thing I will say is, don't do what I've done here unless you're very confident in your skills in the game. And the reason is, you want these lives later in the game. And by later, I mean right before the end of the game. Because when a life is gone in this game, they're gone for good. So that's a really important thing to know. So why did I grab this life? Well, I wanted to try and see if I could beat this dungeon with 2 lives, as I didn't remember it being a particularly tough dungeon. But we'll soon see that in the end it didn't really pay off grabbing the life. It's not the end of the world for me though, because I know where there's some more lives. So here, as I'm going through the maze, we can see there's a secret spot where you can grab the magic container. So I will say follow my guide here for the way through the maze to get the magic container, and a way through that avoids a lot of battles as well. Because I always try to take a direct route through this place that will get you straight to the palace and avoid a lot of battles. However, I don't take the most optimum route at the end, and the reason is there's another way around you can go that will lead to a less... I think it leads to 1 less battle, although I could be wrong about that. But the reason why I did the route I did is so I still have enemies to fight, as I want to get as much experience as possible on this life as I'm travelling towards the next palace. Now, one mistake I made in the last bit is that I actually didn't create a restore point. So when I did that glitch, I had to actually start again from Hyrule Castle. But it worked out better for me, as I had a life to spare. I didn't fall into that pit this time, near the mountain town, so I've got another life to spare here, which is very good to have, along with that extra life. Now, the reason why I say you want to get a lot of experience is, this palace is the first long palace. So far the palaces haven't taken too long, but every palace from this point on are going to be long and full of enemies. And you want to make sure your way towards those palaces, that you're getting some level ups, and you're optimizing your level ups by this point to get closer to maxing out all of your skills. So if you remember, all your skills max out at level 8. So that's a really important thing to note and be aware of, because you want to really be as strong as possible, as fast as possible, because the end game will be much easier for you with higher levels, naturally. But yeah, so we get to the final battle screen before the next palace. I should probably mention a bit about the upstab. So, as I mentioned before, it helps against flying enemies, but in particular these little flying enemies that drop rocks all over are very good to hit with the upstab when they're above you, because the upstab has more accuracy than you think, despite its small appearance. So yeah, and I'll be using it a lot more for the rest of this game. But that's it, we finally made it to the 4th palace. So next time, we'll be beginning the 4th palace of Zelda 2, and finding our way through, getting our item, and beating the boss. So thanks for watching.